Diamond P Sports presents Championship Drag Racing from the National Hot Rod Association. At the foot of the San Gabriel Mountains in Southern California lies the picturesque community of Pomona, new home of the Winston World Finals of drag racing. Hello, everyone. I'm Steve Evans, and this is the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds. For 4 days, the fans have jammed the stands, and they have been treated to record-shattering performances. For example, 8 clockings over 260 miles per hour, the most of any event in drag racing history. And more of those big speeds belong to this man than anybody else. Florida's Don Garlits, known far and wide as Big Daddy. After a 5-year layoff, Garlits returned to competition at this year's U.S. Nationals. He won his 5th U.S. Nationals title, clocking his first 260-mile-an-hour run. Don Garlits wins Indy. Any driver who tops 260 can thank this man, Joe Amato, for developing this new and much taller wing. Joe debuted this wing at Gainesville, Florida, the Gator Nationals, and became the first to top 260. Everyone now has the same kind of wing, but Joe has the world title. He has gone on to tie the record for the number of final round appearances at 7. If he wins today, he'll break that record. If he wins today, he will also tie the record for the most wins in one season at 5. And Joe Amato, yesterday you convinced any doubting Thomases in Southern California, 263 miles an hour. Amazing.
Well, we're happy to, do a good job for the fans, and drag racing is such an exciting sport, and we really want to be part of it and show the people that dragsters are alive for 1984, and they're going to be definitely alive in 1985.
And #1 qualifier as well.
Yeah, #1 qualifier, and there's a possibility we might possibly set the record today for the low AT, because we ran a 42, and 39 is not too far away.
So Joe Amato is going for the record today. Well, Joe still has the low elapsed time, but Don Garlits, here in first-round competition in the near lane, tied Joe Amato's top speed of the event at over 263 miles an hour. Garlits victorious in the first round over Bill Mullen of Alabama. A very close contest for Big Daddy. Garlits very quick to credit his new partner, former drag racer and IndyCar driver Art Malone, who brought the necessary parts and pieces to make this car again competitive. And indeed, the fans in Southern California just love it. We'll also be seeing today at the World Finals the lightning-quick, unpredictable funny cars, also capable of 260-mile-an-hour speeds, 3,000 horsepower engines in front of the driver, very difficult cars to drive. Now, the World Championship here has not been sewn up by a long shot. It's a dogfight between this man, points leader Mark Oswald in the Candies and Hughes Pontiac, Billy Meyer in second position in the Cheap Auto Parts 711 Ford Mustang, and also with a shot, Kenny Bernstein in the Budweiser King. The funny car world title will be decided today in front of this jam-packed stand at Pomona. Anytime the funny cars are running, don't ever take your eyes off the track. Anything can happen, including scenes like this. This is Billy Williams of Torrance, California, in qualifying earlier. A big fire from a supercharger explosion. Not only is there fire, but the supercharger opens the body up like a can opener. A former alcohol dragster, world champion, and top fuel contender, this was Billy Williams' first ever ride in a nitro funny car, and one I'm sure he will long remember. Funny cars do not always come back to their pits quite as pretty as they were when they left. As the safety safari gathered up what was left, I talked to Billy Williams at the end of the track. Well, the obvious first question, are you okay, Billy?
Yeah, I'm okay.
What on earth happened? I've never seen one like that.
I have no idea myself. It just seemed like it must have started to get lean because the car really started to run good down here. It felt like it really started to pick up, and then all of a sudden just boom.
And your first experience with the funny car so far certainly has not been a pleasant one.
It hasn't been great.
It's time for top fuel action. This is round #2. In the near lane, the quickest driver in the world, Gary Beck. In the far lane, from Napa, California, Frank Bradley, the winner of this year's Summer Nationals in Englishtown, New Jersey. Now, Gary Beck in round #1 ran about 16 hundredths of a second quicker than did Frank Bradley. But for Bradley, that's no big concern. He generally runs only as hard as he has to, trying to save those parts and pieces for the rounds to come. They call him the Beard for obvious reasons. Gary Beck, the reigning world champion, has to give up that #1 at the close of action today to Joe Amato. Earlier, I talked to Gary about what happened to his world championship hopes.
Certainly nobody likes to lose any one of these world championships, but Joe's had a tremendous year. We did manage to win 3 races. Generally, that's good enough to win a title, but he did so well and won 3 himself and set the record and did so well at all the others. I mean, he deserves to be world champion. He had a great race team, but we'll go after him again next year.
Oh, and indeed, Joe Amato knows that the light beer car and Gary Beck will be intent on taking away that #1 again. Gary Beck, a 2-time world champion, but this is second round, and he's up against a tough customer, Frank Bradley. Bradley always very alert right on that starting line. In fact, it is Bradley away first by 2/100ths of a second, but here comes the big horsepower of Gary Beck at the far end. It is Gary Beck at 563, only 248 miles an hour, to Bradley's 573 at a faster 250 miles an hour. Everyone here at Pomona missing the 3-time world champion Shirley Muldowney, who suffered severe injuries in a high-speed crash earlier this year in Montreal. I asked her son, John, how's she doing?
She's doing good. She's in great spirits, and she's started to answer all of her cards that have come in from friends and fans throughout the whole country. And she sounds good.
There are a lot of nasty rumors. There always are. She will walk again?
I believe she will. I believe she will, but it's awful hard to say something like that before it's time. It takes a long time to heal from injuries of that nature, and just time will tell, you know.
So some encouraging news about Shirley Muldowney. Top Fuel Racing continues round #2. This is the man we've talked so much about. The man who will be crowned world champion today, Joe Amato. Amato, 40 years old, is from Old Forge, Pennsylvania, where he operates a very successful high-performance wholesale operation. His opponent is a farmer, but not any farmer. Larry Meyer and his family are the largest potato farmers in the world in nearby Hemet, California. Now, Larry Meyer holds the track record here at Pomona at 5.40 seconds. That's the car in the far lane. It looks identical to Gary Beck's car because Larry Meyer owns them both. Larry Meyer is out first. Joe Amato lost traction briefly, and that opened the door for Larry Meyer. So now going into the semifinals, both Larry Meyer and Gary Beck, and they will race each other. Larry Meyer, the best reaction time of the day in Top Fuel. Joe Amato lags behind. Suddenly there's smoke off the tires. He gets off the throttle, trying to regain traction, goes after Larry Meyer, but cannot catch Meyer's 5.56 elapsed time. Joe Amato, very, very disappointed.
You know, you told us earlier you were going to try to set the record to prove to the Southern California fans what a Joe Amato was really capable of. Did you maybe overpower the racetrack trying to go for that record?
No, we had to change the motors. We had something happen to that motor, a minor thing, but it caused the cam to get grooved up, so we had to put a different motor in, and it was a little different combination, so it kind of threw us off track a little bit.
So for Joe Amato, his most successful season ever comes to a very abrupt end here at Pomona. Top Fuel action round 2 continuing. In the far lane is Denver Schutz of Fresno, California. Denver is a raisin rancher and has been drag racing for about 20 years, but still looking for that first big NHRA win. In only his second year of Top Fuel competition from nearby Riverside, California, is Shannon Stewart. Now, Shannon's lucky to even be on the starting line because watch in the near lane. This is qualifying, and Shannon Stewart does a spectacular wheel stand. He tries to feather it down, but to no avail. It comes down very hard, a lot of front end damage, but his crew repaired the machine, and here we see him in round #2. Shannon Stewart in the white car. In the far lane, Denver Schutz. Schutz, one of the first drivers, in fact, in the famous 5-second club, one of the first to get below 6 seconds in a Top Fuel dragster. He did it right here at the Winter Nationals some years ago. Both drivers staging very carefully. They'll see a flash of yellow, then the green light. They are off right together. Denver Schutz in the far lane, but it is Shannon Stewart. Shannon Stewart pulling ahead, a fine 5.69 elapsed time at 250 miles an hour to Denver Schutz 595, 243. Now it's time in the second round for Big Daddy Don Garlits. He is tied top speed of the event, as we mentioned earlier, at over 263 miles an hour. The black car from Florida in this round will be up against Gary Ormsby. who won the Winter Nationals on this very same racetrack back in February. So now the season kicks off at Pomona, and it concludes with the World Finals. Ormsby, a car dealer in Roseville, California, has been racing a long time. That Winter Nationals, his biggest ever victory. To many longtime fans, this man, Don Garlits, is drag racing.
She was new, old and broken. This car of mine, there's been a lot of races we've been through. No slow girl, I never want to part with her, you see. This little car means a heck of a lot to me. This car of mine, this car of mine.
Don, you took a back seat in the sport for a while, and now you're back with a vengeance. Why?
Well, you know, I took a few years off putting my museum together. I built a museum for the sport, drag racing. And, you know, it took about 4 years out of my life. We worked, my wife and I worked real hard on that thing, spent a lot of money on it, and you just can't do two things at once.
Do you wonder sometimes if at 52 you might be a little old for this sort of thing?
That's what they keep telling me.
Well, why are you back doing it so strong?
Well, you know, I got a lot of letters have come to me over the last few years wanting me to come back and race, and then the people come through the museum, Big Daddy, why don't you, you know, you're not too old to race. And so I got Malone, a friend of mine and partner from years ago. We put a little program together to finish out 1984 and then, you know, hopes of obtaining a sponsor for 85.
Did you ever envision back in the 60s, 5 second elapsed times, 260 miles an hour?
Of course not. You know, we run 85 miles an hour, 20 seconds in the quarter, and we were just having fun, just a bunch of kids, you know.
And he's still got the reactions of a kid. He'll need them right now in second-round competition up against a much younger Gary Ormsby, who, as I mentioned earlier, was triumphant here at the opening race of the season, the Winter Nationals. Ormsby from Sacramento is in the far lane. Don Garlits had lane choice by virtue of a quicker time in the previous round. He has taken the near side. They're set and ready. They leave right together. Ormsby giving Garlits a great race, but it's Don Garlits winning it and going to the semifinals. 5.55 seconds, another 260-mile-an-hour blast. Ormsby trails at a very close 5.64. Look at how Garlits' old 4-year-old car works. The front end stays on the asphalt where it belongs, and the chassis does the flexing. Well, Don Garlits had to run the perfect race to get by Gary Ormsby. It was close.
You know, you had never run 260 really at the U.S. Nationals. Is it do you feel that in the seat of your pants? Can you tell that kind of mile an hour?
Yes, sir, you sure can. It is a ride down there. I mean, those traps go pip, pip, pip.
Don, talking about the finish line lights that are 66 feet apart. They go by quickly at those speeds. And speaking of quick, the crowd is on their feet now for the plastic-bodied funny cars. And here's the classic underdog in the far lane. That is Sherm Gunn. This is as far in major competition as Sherm has ever gone, and he's up against one of the greatest drivers in funny car in drag racing history, Don the Snake Prudhomme, Granada Hills, California, 4-time world champion. Prudhomme has had an up-and-down season and hopes to get the combination for 85 here at the final race of 84. Now, Sherm Gunn from nearby Glendora, California, has already played a spoiler's role here at the World Finals. That happened earlier in first-round competition up against Kenny Bernstein. Sherm Gunn, a tremendous hole shot in the far lane. Bernstein did not react as quickly as Sherm to the light. Bernstein and the Budweiser King in the near lane finds himself behind Sherm Gunn, and that's where he stayed. Losing his bid for a world title, Kenny was so dejected.
Reactions weren't there, and it was one of those days.
Well, I know you're rolled down right now, and we'll let you get back to the pits and try to get a little happier. Kenny Bernstein is all done for this season.
Well, Kenny Bernstein loses his bid thanks to the hole shot by Sherm Gunn. Can Sherm Gunn put away yet another one of the big names? In this case, it's Don the Snake Prudhomme. Sherm Gunn, a race car builder by trade, in fact has worked on many of the funny cars in this field at the World Finals, specializing in that interior 10, the firewalls, all the things that keep the fire off of the drivers. It's Prudhomme in the near lane, the blue and white Firebird. Sherm Gunn in the far lane. It is Sherm Gunn again reacting first. Sherm Gunn is out first, close to the center line, fighting for control. It is Sherm Gunn going into his first ever national event semifinal. Don Prudhomme not even needing the parachute as he coasts across the finish line. Gunn's speed of only 224 miles an hour tells you that he shut it off early, a 5.98 elapsed time. He had a 5.89 in the first round to dispose of Kenny Bernstein. So Sherm Gunn has got the local fans excited. You can bet on that. And our next pair of funny cars already fired for the burnouts in round 2 action. But first, let's talk to Sherm.
Kenny Bernstein first, now the snake. Wow.
Well, we just take them as we can.
Of course, your driving is what beat Bernstein.
I think it was. We were out on him quite a bit, and I was watching him coming down through here. And he just couldn't pass me.
You're going to need more than 590s to continue through this field, though, unless you've got this kind of luck all day.
Well, maybe we got a little bit of luck on our side for a change.
A fine guy, Sherm Gunn, headed for the semifinals. One of these cars will join him there. Will it be Rick Johnson and the Hawaiian punch car of Roland Leong? Johnson taking over full-time now, the car previously driven by Mike Dunn. His opponent, one of the real veterans, Ed the Ace McCullough in the Larry Minor-owned Oldsmobile funny car. So Larry Minor has his two dragsters in the semifinals of Top Fuel. Now he hopes the funny car can be equally as successful. McCullough in the far lane. Rick Johnson will be in the near lane. Here a head-on shot at the start in the second round. They move right together. It is McCullough with an early advantage in that far lane. McCullough, Johnson, it is Ed McCullough at 5.84 seconds to Rick Johnson's very close 5.86. In replay, watch McCullough in the far lane. The reaction timers tell us that he had a 3/100th of a second advantage off the starting line. Rick Johnson, his 5.86 was not quite enough. Ed the Ace McCullough goes into the semifinal round. Now, there is only one car left that can possibly take the World Championship away from Mark Oswald, and that is Billy Meyer, who will be one half of the next pair here in the second round. In fact, here is Billy Meyer, fired and ready for the ritual burnout to heat those tires and lay some hot, sticky rubber down on that racetrack. So Billy Meyer in the 711 Cheap Auto Parts Ford Mustang will be up against here Dale Polding, who has found some reborn horsepower in the Miller Warrior Firebird here in the Tower Lane. Billy Meyer with the roof hatch open to let in some cool air, and this is one of the hardest working drivers in professional funny car racing, Dale Polding, Van Nuys, California. Billy Meyer, 3 times in his career he has been number 2 in the world. He'll at least be number 2 again as Kenny Bernstein is out. That puts Billy in the number 2 spot. If he can continue to win and there's any bad luck for Mark Oswald, who knows? It could be Meyer's first ever world championship before this day is out. Meyer inching forward in the far lane. Dale Polding in the near lane. They leave right together. They stay together. Polding weaving down that right-hand lane. It is Billy Meyer at 5.73 to a tremendous 5.79 from Dale Polding. Had Polding gone straight, who knows? Looking at it again, Meyer a little bit overstaged, but still reacts very quickly. In fact, he's out by 4/100ths of a second. Suddenly, Polding pulls right even with him. Then the tires begin to slip. Allows the car to skate around a bit. That wins the race for Billy Meyer. Let's talk to him.
It got mighty close. And then what happened on the starting line? Looked like you overstaged?
Yeah, well, he had gone in stage, and I was trying to hurry up and get everything done, and when I blinked in, I just went too far in, and that's just part of the game, I guess.
Well, that'll rattle a lot of drivers. Instead, you had an advantage.
Yeah, it seemed to work. Now we just need to see what Oswald does, see if I can get the ball back here.
So Billy Meyer's Hail Mary pass worked this time. He steps up to a 5.73. Let's go back to the starting line and see how Mark Oswald is doing.
Billy Meyer has been equating the competition to a football game all day long, and he told me just before that race that was kind of a student body go long. In other words, he had pulled out all the stops, and he's going to have to if he's to defeat Mark Oswald of Cincinnati, Ohio, who some people here think should be president. Oswald driving the famed red Firebird of the Candies and Hughes team from Houma, Louisiana. Mark, in this very same car, at the recent U.S. Nationals Labor Day weekend, reset the NHRA funny car lap time record with a 5.69 second blast. His opponent here in the semifinals, one of only 2 funny cars to ever run over 260 miles an hour, that is Tom the Mongoose McEwen, who had his biggest ever payday at the U.S. Nationals, winning $50,000 in the Big Bud Shootout. Mark Oswald's wife, Janie, looking on, fingers crossed, toes crossed, wanting that world championship so badly for her husband, Mark. In the far lane, a real local favorite, Tom the Mongoose McEwen. He's been drag racing for a living for over 20 years from nearby Fountain Valley, California. Remember, he too has 260-mile-an-hour potential. McEwen in the far lane, Oswald in the near lane. They leave right together. McEwen smokes the tires. Mark Oswald will take this win light and go into the semifinals. 5.93 seconds at 254 miles per hour. Well, Janie gets one more win light, and I'm sure in her head right now, she's trying to add up those points to see if they've clinched that title, but I believe it's just a little bit too soon. Down at the far end, Mark Oswald making the turn in the beautiful red car. Let's look at it again. Even though Tom McEwen was out of the race early with the tires smoking, Mark Oswald ran as hard as he could, trying to back up a record he set in the first round of 261 miles an hour for bonus world points. He didn't do it.
Well, an exhausted Mark Oswald with the helmet off. You got the win light, but unfortunately not the record, Mark. 252 was not enough.
Yeah, I think that win will do it for us, so I just want to keep in there.
Well, the officials tell us, Mark, that you got to go just a little bit further in competition. Billy Meyer still has a mathematical chance. Pro Stock, the factory hot rods. Their season came down to 2 men vying for the world title. Warren Johnson of Norcross, Georgia, has won 3 races in a row coming into the World Finals. Lee Shepard, Arlington, Texas, the rear-end Morrison Camaro. If he wins the world title, he'll be the first to ever win 4 consecutive times. The points are so close that the driver that goes furthest in eliminations today will be the world champion. If they both were to go out in the same round, then Warren Johnson would be the world champion. This was earlier in first-round action. Warren Johnson in the near lane was out first over Ricky Smith in the Ford Thunderbird, but suddenly Warren Johnson does not have his usual power. It is Ricky Smith in a tremendous upset at 789 to a very slow for Warren 7.97. So back in the staging lanes, Lee Shepard knew what he had to do. If he could, here in the first round, defeat Joe Lapone, he would retain his #1, be the first driver to ever win the Pro Stock title 4 times in a row. So the World Championship came down to this first round race. It is Lee Shepard and Joe Lapone. Joe Lapone is out first. Shepard not wanting to risk a red light. Shepard drives around. He is the new world champion at 7.71 seconds to a losing 779. So the Lee Shepard rear and Morrison crew very happy as they head back to the pits. And Lee Shepard has now advanced to the semifinal round of Pro Stock, and that's where we pick up the action. And this crowd of 30,000 plus is ready for the first race in the semifinals. It pits 2 Trans Ams against each other. In the near lane is Butch Leal of Black Lick, Ohio. In round number 1, Butch got around the powerful Chrysler car of Reed Wisnett, and in round number 2, it was Butch Leal, for many years known as the California Flash, getting by Ronnie Manchester. Were it not for a back problem suffered some years ago, Butch Leal might well have become a professional golfer. He still can shoot a scratch game. His opponent over in the far lane, Don Kuntz, has done very well in this season of professional drag racing. He finished number 6 last year, could finish even higher if he gets by Leal here in the semis. So leaping towards the starting line where they'll stage is Don Kuntz in the far lane, Butch Leal in the near lane. Now, these are 500 cubic inch motors. That's the maximum. 2,350 pounds with the driver. 4-speed transmissions. Butch Leal is known as an artist on that starting line. Let's see if he can get away first over Don Kuntz. Moving up very carefully. They'll bring the engines up to almost 9,000 RPMs and literally slide that left foot off the clutch. Leal is ready. Don Kuntz is finally ready. Don Kuntz leaves too soon. A red light disqualifies the car in the far lane. Butch Leal goes on to the final round of the Winston World Finals. The black car in the near lane wins it at 7.74 seconds and even 180 miles an hour. Watch the tree, you see the lights, and before the circuit was complete to green, Don Kuntz moved. It bypassed green and went right to red for instant disqualification of Don Kuntz. Kuntz was gambling there. He did not have quite the performance of Butch Leal and just thought, if I get the whole shot. Well, here is Etta Glidden lining up her husband Bob Glidden in the Ford in the near lane, and this is the Pro Stock race the fans came to see. Bob Glidden and Lee Shepard, the two responsible for 9 world championships between them. Bob Glidden of Whiteland, Indiana, in the 711 Cheap Auto Parts Ford Thunderbird, a very aerodynamically sound car. And here's the man who today clinched his 4th world title, very soft-spoken Lee Shepard of Arlington, Texas. Shepard will wear the #1 for at least 1 more year. Shepard in the far lane, Glidden in the near lane. We'll watch to see if there's an advantage for either driver. They leave right together. Lee Shepard in the far lane trying to match wheels with Glidden, but Glidden is starting to stretch it out. It is going to be Bob Glidden. Low elapsed time of the day. Etta is more than pleased. 762 at 181 miles an hour. Lee Shepard knew it was all over at half track and just threw in the towel, coasting through at 8.04 seconds. The crowd is still murmuring about that. The Pro Stock final will be Butch Leal versus Bob Glidden. All right, the first pair getting fired and ready for the semifinals of funny car competition. It will be Ed the Ace McCullough in the Oldsmobile car owned by Larry Miner up against Mark Oswald, gunning for that world title and also trying to back up a new funny car national record. But first, Bob Glidden, it had to feel awfully good to get by Lee Shepherd here today.
Lee was kind of looking forward to winning the world championship, and then after Warren went out the first round, he got really greedy and wanted to win the race. So I'm glad we won. I think we came here a little better prepared, and my gosh, I'm happy right now.
Well, there is one confident man going into the finals of Pro Stock. Now we're going to start building the final of funny cars. This is the semis. In the far lane, Mark Oswald for Candies and Hughes, the old Milwaukee Beer Firebird. A battle of the breweries is the light beer car from Miller moves in the near lane. That, of course, is Ed McCullough. If McCullough could eliminate Oswald here, he would open the door for Billy Meyer to possibly outpoint Oswald for the world title. They leave right together, but smoke in the tires. Getting sideways is Ed McCullough. Mark Oswald at 5.79 seconds. 258 miles an hour. The speed still not quite enough to back up that record for the bonus points, but I have a feeling that the win here, when all the points are calculated, will make that young man funny car world champion. And Oswald had his hands full with McCullough until McCullough just simply overpowered the racetrack.
How'd the car feel?
Felt real good that time, you know, a lot better than before. Last round it was a little weak, you know, we almost made a big mistake there, but luckily we got through that.
A big top speed might be enough to back up that record.
Yeah, I don't know. It should be close.
We'll check on that, and good luck to you in the final.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, now it's Billy Meyer's turn to try on the giant killer, Sherm Gunn. Sherm will be in the far lane with the race car he built himself. He's already defeated, you'll remember, Kenny Bernstein and Don Prudhomme in rounds 1 and 2. Billy Meyer here in the near lane, better not underestimate the man from Glendora, California. Meyer, right now, still hoping for a world title, but unless he was to set both ends of the national record, win the entire event, he'd have little chance. Billy Meyer is out first, but here comes Sherm Gunn. Sherm Gunn noses out Billy Meyer. Sherm Gunn goes into his first ever national event final round. 591 to a 599. Billy might have softened the car up just a little bit to avoid smoking the tires, and Sherm Gunn nips him right at the wire. The incredible Sherm Gunn having his best ever day at the drag races. Meyer was ahead of him until just about mid-track when Gunn inches forward. Sherm Gunn coming out of the car here at the far end. Good job, Sherm.
How many years have you been trying this?
God, about 20, I think.
Another overnight success.
Not an overnight success, but just perseverance.
Well, you know, unless this luck continues, and skill for that matter, but still, you're going to need more than 590s to beat that red car.
I know it, but we've done it so far. Consistency.
Anything you can do to try to whittle down that elapsed time?
Well, we're going to look at it. We're going to try.
So it's a David and Goliath funny car final. Goliath being the new world champion, Mark Oswald, and David, of course, the incredible Sherm Gunn, his first ever final round. It's time for the Top Fuel semifinals. It will be in this first race, Don Garlitz, the new team of Garlitz and Malone. He will be in the near lane as crew chief Herb Parks removes the electrical starter, checks over the engine, making sure nothing is leaking, and he'll motion Big Daddy into the burnout area. Garlitz has just been phenomenal all weekend long. As we said earlier, more 260-mile-an-hour clockings than any other driver. And that is a 4-year-old race car that he took off the museum floor in Ocala, Florida. Updated, certainly, but still a rather old race car. You wonder what he's going to be up to next year. Now, his opponent here, and this has got to be a dream come true for young Shannon Stewart, as with every Top Fuel driver, they just idolize Garlitz. And the chance to race him and maybe even beat him, well, that's just a dream come true. And especially for Shannon, who's had so many problems all weekend long. You saw the wheel stand earlier that bent up the front end quite badly. But he has just been charging through the competition. And this is the furthest that Shannon Stewart has ever gone at an NHRA national event. Here at Pomona, he's in the semifinals. Garlitz, he doesn't pay any attention whatsoever to who's in that other lane. He just runs his own race against the clock. Seldom bothers to even look over and see where the other driver is. Shannon Stewart, he's got to be feeling the pressure a little bit here anyway. Everybody does when they race Big Daddy. Like Garlitz says, they're all, I'm like an old gunfighter in the West, and every new gun in town wants a shot at me. Shannon Stewart takes his shot right now. Don Garlitz inching in. Stewart's ready. A good lead by both drivers. Shannon Stewart is in front, but suddenly Stewart has problems. The engine goes away. It is Don Garlits going into his second consecutive NHRA final round, 561, but his speed drops off a bit to 255 miles an hour. Who will race Don Garlits in the final? The two cars on the starting line appear to be identical, and in many ways they are, owned by the same man, Larry Meyer. Meyer up against his teammate Gary Beck. Beck has reigned as world champion this year, but now Joe Amato takes over that prestigious position. You are looking at the two quickest top fuel dragsters in the world. In the near lane, Larry Meyer, the track record holder at 5:40. In the far lane, the national record holder, Gary Beck, at 5:39. But first, Don Garlits.
The car shook just a little bit?
It did. It lost some traction.
But the track seems to be holding up marvelously.
Track is real good.
Okay, well, let's go back to the starting line and see who Big Daddy's opponent is going to be in that final round. It's going to be one of the Larry Meyer-owned cars. We know that for sure.
And if Garlits could pick his opponent, I think he'd go with Gary Beck. The two have had some memorable battles over the years, most of them on the racetrack, a couple off. It was Garlits who edged out Beck for the '74 world title. Earlier, I asked Larry Meyer what it was like to race his own teammate.
Well, we're going to try to have a real good race out of it. We'd like to run a couple 550s. Seems like every time we've got together, something's happened to one car or the other. But we're going to, there's nothing to be gained or lost except the pride for my crew, who always has to kind of take the back seat when we race Gary. So we're going to really kind of give it our best shot.
What a job that man has done, Larry Meyer. It's the student versus the pupil. Meyer, who learned to drive from Gary Beck, even though he's a championship off-road racer. Drag racing's a whole other ballgame. This is the boss, Larry Meyer, a very quick study, entering only his second year in top fuel racing. In the far lane, the former world champion, the '83 world champion, really, Gary Beck. Here we see the two of them staged. On the left is Meyer. On the right of the tree is Gary Beck. They move in. All four lights are lit. It's time for the pro start. They leave right together, wheels in the air. Gary Beck hazes the tires a little bit. Beck will have to play catch-up, and he does. Gary Beck in the far lane, burning a few pistons, but he gets around the boss at 560 to Larry Meyer's very game, 5.68 seconds. Let's look again. Actually, it was Meyer who moved by about 100th first right off the starting line. Now, Beck appeared to be in big trouble as he lost traction and the car veered. But he is such a good driver with the clutch, with the brake and the throttle, that he gathers it back up, sets sail. Meyer may have had some of his own problems. Gary Beck thunders around for the victory. It is Gary Beck who will race Don Garlits in the final round.
Well, Gary Beck arrives down here with an obviously wounded race car. Anytime there's oil pouring out of one of these machines like this, it generally means that a connecting rod has been kicked to the pan or the side of the block, which is quite difficult to repair and generally indicates that an engine change will have to be made. So Gary Beck, his enthusiasm over beating the boss, Larry Meyer, is certainly be tempered by this. Gary, we got a serious problem here.
Yeah, Steve, I guess it broke a rod.
One thing we know for sure, that there's plenty of spare motors over there, but is there one that'll run this good?
Yeah, there's another one back there.
I'm sure Gary will be looking for the pick of the litter to go up against Don Garlits.
And back in the pit area, Don Garlits already disassembling his motor, getting ready for that final round against Gary Beck. Drag racing invites the fans right into the racer's locker room, so to speak, and you can bet always that Don Garlits will draw the largest crowd of them all. They'll stand there for hours and hours for weekends just watching Don Garlits work. So the final is set up, and a beauty it is. Don Garlits looking for 2 in a row in his return to big-time NHRA drag racing versus the world's quickest Gary Beck. But before we see those finals in the pro categories, here is the final in the top alcohol funny car category. And this partisan Southern California crowd is going to be rooting for the driver in the near lane. That is Brad Anderson. He has had a record-breaking season, coming in here with 5 national event victories in 1 year. He owns the national laps time record at 6:25, the national speed record for alcohol funny cars at 224 miles an hour. His opponent is Oregon's finest, Steve McGee, in the far lane. He definitely rules the roost in this class in the Great Northwest. Anderson, the beautiful candy apple car, in the near lane. Steve McGee in the far lane. The big difference between alcohol cars and nitro cars, of course, is the fuel in the tank. These cars restricted alcohol. They also run here larger engines and 2-speed transmissions. Steve McGee is in trouble, out of control. saves it from getting onto the guardrail, but it is Brad Anderson with his 6th victory in one season. He's the world champion as well. 632, 223 miles an hour. What a year for Brad Anderson of Glendora, California, a 44-year-old professional engine builder. It just doesn't get much better than 1984 for Brad Anderson. Now it's time to settle the event title at the World Finals among the alcohol dragsters. In the near lane, backing up after his burnout, is Brian Raymer, formerly a world champion, number 7 in the world last year, as witnessed by the number 7 on the side of his car. Raymer using the Arius power plant, an aluminum engine designed specifically for drag racing. In fact, you'll find aftermarket engine blocks in just about all of these cars. Brian Raymer's dad looking in, making sure everything's fine in the cockpit. They're both watching the water temperature gauge to make sure that the engine has enough heat to respond on the starting line. Now, Brian's opponent here has been clocking quicker elapsed times all through eliminations, and that is Dr. Stephen Fideli, a chiropractor from Fresno, California, in only his first year of supercharged dragster racing, coming out of the normally aspirated competition eliminator ranks. Big difference in speed between the two classes. So Dr. Steve in the far lane from Fresno, Brian Raymer inching in, Aurora, Colorado, in the near lane. The top alcohol dragster final. Finally, Raymer is in. Buster Couch, the starter, will give them the flick of the yellow to green. Brian Raymer's away first. Stephen Fideli was a little late off the mark. It's going to cost him. It is Brian Raymer by an eyelash. Brian Raymer, Aurora, Colorado, takes home the gold in top alcohol dragster racing. It was all won for Raymer right on the starting line. He was very alert. In only his second season, I said, Dr. Stephen Fideli just didn't quite time the light as the veteran Raymer did. Raymer, your World Finals alcohol dragster champion. It is time for the finals among the professionals, beginning with pro stock. Bob Glidden, Whiteland, Indiana, the red, white, and blue Chief Auto Parts Ford Thunderbird. They push a button on the shifter that locks up the front brakes, allows them to get those huge rear slicks churning in the water to heat them up. His opponent, known as a starting line wizard, is Butch Leal of Blacklick, Ohio, in the Castrol GTX Pontiac Trans Am. Now Glidden, as you've seen in earlier competition, has been the quickest driver on the grounds today as far as elapsed times are concerned. Leal is going to need one of those famous California flash hole shots that he's known for. Leal has been racing here at Pomona since drag racing literally began here almost 20 years ago. Glidden in the near lane, Butch Leal in the far lane. Ford versus Pontiac. As they move forward, neither wanting to stage first. Butch Leal putting a little psychological pressure on Glidden. Glidden doesn't seem to be buying it, just takes his time. Butch Leal is off the mark first. Butch Leal with a whole shot, but Bob Glidden is going to just outpower him with that hemispherical head aluminum Ford racing engine. Etta Glidden, the crew, they have worked so hard for 4 days, had a lot of problems in qualifying with the tires shaking, the car loose, but Glidden with a brand new national record of 7.61 seconds, 181 miles an hour. Congratulations from starter Buster Couch. Watch the far lane. You can see it visibly. Butch Leal was off the mark first by at least 0.02 of a second, but as Bob Glidden sets the front wheels down at the top end of low gear, he takes command, never to be headed. Bob Glidden wins the World Finals event title here today. A happy man.
So an up and down season for Bob Glidden definitely ends on an up note. The event winner here at the World Finals. Congratulations, Bob.
Thank you, Steve. This is an up note. I think someone said we set the record at a 61.
That's right.
Great. I know Etta's overjoyed, and the sponsors are going to be happy too, so it's been a good finish to a bad year.
Tell me about the starting line. What happened up there?
Nothing out of the ordinary. I knew Butch was going to do a little bit of some...
little dance for it.
Yeah, and he waited maybe a little bit too long, but there was no big deal.
Well, you played it very cool. He had a little of an advantage, maybe 0.02 of a second, but you gave him that. You had the power to do that.
I didn't give him anything. If he got it, he earned it.
Well, this could be a sign of big things to come. Next season, you're looking at your World Finals champion, Bob Glidden.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
For sheer fury and excitement in motorsports, nothing matches AA fuel funny cars. And what a contrast we have among the combatants for the World Finals event title. Sherm Gunn, the Giant Killer, who disposed of, in order, Kenny Bernstein, Don Prudhomme, and Billy Meyer, has been the spoiler here today. Mark Oswald. He has now clinched his first ever funny car world title for the Candies and Hughes team. He is up against Sherm Gunn. And don't think Oswald is not aware of what Gunn has been pulling off here today on the Pomona quarter mile. But Oswald may be handicapped a bit here. He had to change engines. They hurt the motor in the semifinals so badly, they had to go into the trailer and pull out one of their spares. Anytime you change engines, there's always a chance that something could be left loose or not be right. Racers will tell you all their engines are the same. Well, I've never seen two run the same. Sherm Gunn, on the other hand, just put in a couple of pistons, had an enjoyable time between rounds chatting with his friends. His young son, only 9 years old, little Sherm, helping out as well as a lot of his friends and neighbors. No fancy designer uniforms or 18-wheelers in Sherm's pits. A very economical act. In fact, here was the engine change as it occurred just moments ago in the pit area. Mark Oswald himself on the far side of the engine, helping out Tom Cattleman, Candies and Hughes. And here, the contrast over in Sherm Gunn's pit. They had time for little Sherm to get in there and clean out the inside of the body, so his daddy would have a nice clean car for his first ever final round. Can Sherm Gunn do it again? If he does, these grandstands will explode, because you could literally throw a rock and hit Sherman's house from the LA County Fairgrounds here at Pomona. He ran all of the national events, or the majority of them this year, and I tell you, I think that kind of experience has helped get Sherm Gunn into the final round. But here, in the near lane, is the quickest funny car in the world, but there's a problem with the Oswald car. A brief magnesium fire. He probably blew a head gasket. Lo and behold, does little Sherm and Mrs. Sherm ever love this? A 5.87 seconds will put $25,000 or $30,000 in the Sherm Gunn racing account. The most it's ever seen. As we look at it again, both with the wheels in the air. It was Sherm Gunn moving first by a little over a second, and you saw that fire inside the engine compartment, and you can bet that Mark Oswald saw it through the lucite windows that are installed in the firewall. Anytime they light up orange, you shut it off, or you could burn the car to the ground. A good leave, and there it is. No doubt, a torched head gasket on the Candies and Hughes car. The engine change hurt him bad. Sherm Gunn wins the World Finals in a 6-year-old race car. He built himself every nut and bolt. Only 2 cars remain out of the 700 that jammed the pits here last Thursday at the LA County Fairgrounds in Pomona, and 2 of the biggest names in top fuel dragster racing. Gary Beck will be in the near lane. Now, Beck also has had to change engines. We saw earlier in the semifinals oil all over the shutdown area, so Beck has a fresh power plant. Don Garlits, that's the same engine. They freshened it up, replaced whatever pistons were necessary, checked the supercharger. Everything should be right for the big black car from Ocala, Florida. Now, Garlits raced here at the Winter Nationals in February with subpar equipment, to be quite honest about it, and still beat Gary Beck, who red-lighted against the pressure of racing Big Daddy. Here earlier in the pits, you see what they call a long block being swung into the frame rails of Gary Beck's dragster. They will take the clutch, the supercharger, and the fuel system off of the exploded engine, put it on that motor, and bring it to the starting line, as they already have. Gary Beck and Don Garlits. Not a single fan has left his or her seat, except maybe to stand up for this great 2-car final. Now hosting the Winter Nationals and the World Finals, Pomona Raceway has got to be considered one of the great facilities in the sport. A fairgrounds parking lot that only twice a year is magically transformed into one of the world's quickest drag strips. It is Gary Beck, lining up very carefully in the near lane. This is Garlits. So calm, so cool. How many thousands of times has Big Daddy pulled to the starting line at drag strips across the country? Art Malone, his new partner, looking on. It was Malone who brought the quality engine parts to Don Garlits' operation, and in many ways have made all of this possible. But it was Big Daddy who almost instantly figured out the fuel system secrets that formerly were only known to Gary Beck. Beck with the wheels in the air. Beck has to get off the throttle to try to settle the car down. It is Don Garlits winning back-to-back the U.S. Nationals and the World Finals. It is bedlam here at Pomona. Gary Beck launched hard right with Garlits, and we'll see that in a moment in replay, but right now it is Don Garlits turning off 3/4 of a mile from where he started. Watch Beck's car. Tremendous traction, so much in fact that the car goes skyward. Had Beck not got off the throttle, it would have gotten even higher or have unloaded on the wheelie bars, losing traction. So Gary Beck fighting for control in the cockpit, all in vain. Don Garlits wins here today. And even down here at the far end of the racetrack, we can hear the reception. The crowd here at Pomona is giving Don Garlits and his partner Art Malone, the entire crew with their fists in the air, relishing the moment.
Don Garlits waves to the fans who are blowing their horns as they exit the parking lot here at the Los Angeles County Fairgrounds. After a 5-year layoff, Big Daddy comes back, wins the U.S. Nationals and the World Finals back-to-back.
Thank you very much, Steve. It's really been a pleasure to be here, believe me.
It was smooth on the starting line. Beck did what you figured he would do?
I don't know. I think Beck had some trouble. He was out. We were having a really good race, and it looked like his front end come up. And, of course, he had to back off, and he fell back rapidly then. But it was a real good race until that happened.
I have a feeling that the only thing that'll never be in that museum permanently down in Florida is yourself. You're going to race as long as you can walk and talk.
Well, I hope so. I'm really having a good time anyway.
So did the fans watching Big Daddy win the World Finals here at Pomona.
Gary Beck, always the gentleman, also offering his congratulations to Don Garlits. And our congratulations to all of the winners today here at the World Finals. This is Steve Evans saying so long from Pomona.
Let's do that.
The 1984 Winston World Finals has been a presentation of Diamond P Sports.